Muddy footprints on the carpet, gloved hands covering a face in the dark, a bouquet of roses with a note that no one should have sent. These aren't scenes from a horror movie. They're 3 true stories from 3 different women who discovered in the worst way possible that they were being watched, long before they realized the danger. One thought she was going paranoid until her own apartment door started turning up unlocked every single day, without exception. Another made the mistake of smiling at the wrong person in a bakery, and in less than 24 hours, he already knew where she lived, where she rehearsed, and what she was wearing. And the third is going to make you think twice before sleeping with your window open. If you've ever felt that chill on the back of your neck, that strange certainty that someone is watching you, stay until the end, because these stories prove that instinct should never be ignored.
Before what I'm about to tell, I had never been afraid of living alone. At 19 years old, excited to gain independence, I left a bad roommate situation. I was working full-time as a waitress, making enough to rent my own apartment. Not much, but enough. I found an apartment complex near work that seemed safe and was within my budget. The first few months were peaceful. My routine was simple: work, home, repeat. I only went out to check the mail or take out the trash, both less than a kilometer away. A detail that would become crucial later. It was after those first peaceful months that things started getting strange. I came home from work one day and immediately felt something was wrong. It wasn't the feeling of being watched. It was more like someone had been there while I was gone. The energy was different. My apartment was on the 2nd floor, and as soon as I reached the living room, I saw it. Huge, mud-covered men's footprints scattered across the carpet, leading straight to the kitchen. I went to the kitchen. Empty. Just more muddy footprints. I searched the whole apartment. Nothing missing, which somehow was even more disturbing than if something had been stolen. I called the building management asking if any maintenance staff had entered that day. No one had been assigned to my unit. I told a friend who lived in the same complex. He said I had probably walked in with dirty boots and forgotten. I knew I hadn't, but I started locking everything more carefully. I thought it had passed. I was wrong. The strange things continued, just smaller, subtler. A water jug I kept in the fridge, turned up open, on the counter, half empty. Another time, I found my heater cranked to max, something I would never do since I was the one paying the bill. Every time I told my friend, he'd say the same thing, that I was forgetting, that I was getting paranoid. After all, I had cash lying around, electronics, everything intact. Nothing was ever stolen. After 2 months without concrete proof, I started doubting myself. Until the night, everything changed. I got home from work around 11 p.m., pitch dark. I walked alone from the parking lot to the door like always. I put the key in the lock and realized the door was already slightly open. Not wide open, just enough for me to know it wasn't locked the way I'd left it. I knew I had locked it. I always did. I had a kitten at home that never went outside. Even though I knew I shouldn't, I went in alone anyway, terrified he might have gotten out, or worse. That's when I finally had absolute certainty. Someone was getting into my apartment, and I decided to prove it. I started taping clear tape under the door every time I left. If the tape was peeled off or gone when I got back, it meant the door had been opened. And without fail it had been. Every single time. I started coming home to find my door wide open, no matter where I went or for how long. Even on quick trips to the dumpster less than 2 minutes away. There was only one explanation. Someone wasn't just breaking into my apartment, they were actively watching me. The fear turned into anger. I called the police and started filing reports. Even without proof of theft, they said it would create a record in case the person was ever identified. I tried to break my lease. Management refused to let me out or help in any way. I ended up accepting that my life would be like this until I could finally move out. It was on an afternoon off, relaxing at home, that I saw something no one could deny or call paranoia anymore. My video game console and several other electronics had vanished from the TV stand. For the first time, I felt almost relieved. Finally, proof that not even my friend, not anyone, could ignore. I called the police again. I called my friend, completely shocked and apologetic. He started watching out for me more closely, sometimes even lending me his dog as security while I was at work. I broke the lease and moved out, never finding out who was responsible. 4 years later, now, with my current spouse, we ended up renting in the same neighborhood again, swearing we'd never set foot in that specific complex again. Everything was normal until the day a maintenance worker called me by name in the parking lot and pointed at my old apartment, asking if I used to live there. He told me the truth I'd been waiting years for. A former maintenance employee had been fired and arrested for breaking into women's apartments. He had his own master key and lived right across from my old apartment, less than 15 meters away, watching every time I left. To this day, I carry these experiences with me. Never underestimate your safety. Trust your instincts. It was around 2 a.m. when I was driving home from a friend's house. I lived in Northern Ireland on a street with a row of shops right across from my house. And at the end of that row, the first thing you see entering the street is a pharmacy. I was on autopilot, just thinking about getting into bed. That's when I saw it. A figure standing in front of the pharmacy, dressed completely in black. Motionless. I didn't think much of it. I figured it was someone drunk or out for a late night walk. But as I got closer to turn onto my street, I noticed the person hadn't moved an inch. Something was wrong. I'd heard stories before of break-in attempts at that pharmacy. Was I about to witness a robbery? I slowed the car down to get a better look. The instant my headlights fully lit him up, my heart raced. The person raised both hands and covered his face. He was wearing black leather gloves. And then, slowly, he turned his head, following my car with his eyes, hands still covering his face. I sped up terrified, and without thinking, I drove straight into my driveway, which was right across from that row of shops. It was at that exact second that I realized the fatal mistake I just made. Now he knew exactly where I lived. I froze. I looked in the rearview mirror. For half a second, I felt relief. He was no longer there. But that relief lasted exactly half a second because an even more terrifying thought took its place. If he wasn't there anymore, where had he gone? Not even 20 seconds had passed since I'd spotted him. I ran inside like I'd never run before. Locked the door. Texted a friend telling her what happened. She said I'd probably scared him off by driving past, that I was overreacting. At that moment, it even made sense. I thought about calling the police, but I hadn't actually seen him commit any crime. I decided to let it go. My bedroom faced the front of the house, with a direct view of the pharmacy. Before I go to sleep, I checked through the blinds one last time. The street was empty. I closed the blinds, left the window cracked open like I always did, and fell asleep quickly. I don't know how much time later, I woke up suddenly. Out of nowhere. I'm a deep sleeper. I rarely wake up in the middle of the night. I lay there, silent, trying to figure out what had pulled me out of sleep. Then I heard it, the sound of someone humming. Softly, very softly at first. I went completely still just listening. A few seconds later, I heard it again. A slow, casual hum, like someone killing time. It was coming from outside my window. I checked my phone. 3:30 a.m. My body froze. Why would someone be humming outside my bedroom? I tried to convince myself it was just someone passing by on the street. But deep down, I already knew it wasn't. And then I remembered. My window was cracked open. If this person wanted to, they could force it open and climb in. I was completely alone. There was nothing I could do. My mind raced trying to come up with a plan. I knew that if I called the police right then, the person would hear my voice and know I was awake. I decided, close and lock the windows silently, then call. I got out of bed as quietly as I could. My hand was shaking so badly I could barely move the blinds. The humming stopped, My heart was pounding so hard I worried he could hear it. Slowly, trembling, I opened a small gap in the blinds. What I saw next was the most terrifying thing I have ever witnessed in my life. It was him, the same man from the pharmacy, standing right there outside my window. He had never left. He must have hidden somewhere when I pulled into the driveway, watching everything. He'd seen my bedroom light turn on, seen me close the blinds. He knew exactly which room was mine. The gloved hands were still covering his face, but this time, the fingers were slightly parted. One, I watched me through the gap between his fingers, motionless, silent, and then, slowly, I saw one side of his face smile beneath the gloves. I screamed and pulled away from the window. I called the police, crying so uncontrollably the operator could barely understand me. I have never felt as much relief as when I saw the blue and red lights flashing through my blinds. The police searched the house, neighboring gardens, and alleys. No sign of him. The only thing they found was the pharmacy's door glass, broken. The security gate had been down, so he hadn't been able to get in and had given up and fled. The officer said he had probably realized I'd seen him slow down and watch him. Maybe he wanted to intimidate me for witnessing the start of a crime. Maybe he had another reason. I'll never know. I still live in that same house today. I never saw that man again. But every time I pass the pharmacy late at night, I still look at that exact spot where he stood. And I always think about that night. It was an ordinary Wednesday morning. I was 21, home on college break, and I did something I had done hundreds of times before. I walked into the bakery near my house to buy bagels. Little did I know that this mundane decision was about to turn my life into a weeks-long nightmare. A new employee served me, 24, maybe 25, and there was something about the way he watched me. Too attentive, too focused, the true meaning of which I would only understand later. When it came time to pay, I dropped my change on the floor. He rushed to help me, and I noticed a bandage on his finger. "Rugby," he said. We talked for 30 seconds. I paid. I left. A completely forgettable encounter. I was wrong. That very afternoon, I received a notification that made my stomach turn. The bakery employee had found me on Instagram. I never told him my name. Never. I removed him from my followers, trying to convince myself it was just a coincidence. Half an hour later, he followed me again and sent a message. He couldn't stop thinking about me. I blocked him. I thought it was over. It was only the beginning. The next day, he created a second account. 50 notifications in a single afternoon. The day after that, during a break from a theater rehearsal, I opened my phone and counted over 100 notifications across multiple platforms. He had found my Snapchat, my TikTok. He was liking posts from 3 years ago, and the tone of the messages was changing. Angry, possessive, demanding answers I would never give. At 10 o'clock, I walked out the back door of the theater alone into the dark. And that was when I saw it, a shadow moving near my car. A man standing right beside the driver's side window. I ran. I locked the door behind me. My hand was shaking so badly I could barely speak when I found the stage manager and told him everything. He went to check. He came back saying there was no one out there. It was at that exact moment that my phone buzzed. A new message. 5 words that turned my blood to ice. "You look good in blue." I was wearing blue that day. He had been there. He had seen me. When I finally walked to my car, escorted, I saw the proof I dreaded. 2 perfectly clear handprints pressed against the glass of the driver's side window. He had been standing there, in the dark, waiting, and I knew exactly how he had figured out where I was. An Instagram story, a simple repost from the play's cast, had revealed the address of the entire theater. I tried to disappear. I stopped posting in real time. I changed my route to work. I stopped setting foot in that bakery. But every attempt to escape only fueled his obsession. The messages became more frequent, angrier, asking why I had vanished, demanding to know where I was. And then, during the opening weekend of the play, the moment I feared most the worst happened. A friend from the cast came up to me after the Saturday matinee. Someone had shown up. They had left flowers. For a second, a spark of hope. Maybe it was just a kind gesture. It was him, a bouquet of roses, and a note I will never forget. He knew I had stopped going to the bakery. He knew I didn't park in the same spot anymore. He said he would be patient. He said the roses would look beautiful in my bedroom. And he ended with a line that chilled me to the bone. I didn't need anyone escorting me to my car anymore, because now I had him. That was when I discovered the most terrifying truth of all. He had walked into the theater pretending to be my boyfriend, fooling a box office staff member, asking exactly where I would appear after the show. And worse, he had already bought tickets for the entire run of the show. The theater management called an emergency meeting. He was banned. His tickets canceled. I filed for a restraining order. I haven't had any contact with him since. But to this day, I wonder how many women have lived through this exact same thing. A mundane, even polite encounter that turned into the worst nightmare of their lives. And how many weren't lucky enough to escape in time?